to informing us and shaping society and ensuring that outside of traditional media, there's a perspective that is credible, there's a perspective that has no hidden agenda but only and solely to educate and inform us. So I think the role that she's playing is an important one. Let's appreciate her. Let's also appreciate the leadership of Mkondo Wesizwe in Eastern Cape, led by Comrade Mawanda, and the student leaders, the youth leaders who are present in the delegation. Thank you so much, Comrade, to support us in this important event and conversation. Let me also appreciate my colleague in the National High Command and a person who's renowned and has contributed immensely to the jurisprudence of our country. Comrade Utali Mbofu, it's an honor to share. Let me also appreciate my fellow panelist member who has done an immense amount of work in shaping, I think, academics and fighting colonialization, in getting us to understand what colonialization is in institutions of higher learning. This is Mzoto Comrade Pedro, Dr. Pedro. Angibingelele futhi nama-TikTokers omkhonto wesizwe wabukhoma lapha phezulu umhlonishwa nawo ngiyabona lapho siyabona. And all the students who are present here today, I think now my talk can start. If I have not observed you, I'll protocol you when I observe you at a stage. Yes. So last time when I was here, I was clothed in the regalia of my political party called Shiluba. Shiluba was a political party founded on the firm understanding and belief that we need to move away from westernization of our politics. We must move away and back to ourselves and indigenization of our politics, because there was a fundamental gap that precludes black people from politics. Most don't get politics, but don't get from the prism of Marxism and all the other isms. But what happened with our inherent knowledge and ideology that informed us as a people, that informed the governance systems we had as a people? That frustrated me as a young person, and I thought, let me do something. Let me create something that does not exist at that stage, which will attempt to shape the body of our politics. And in such is life. You attempt great things and you fail. And then you move on. Fortunately for us, someone succeeded who was trying to do the exact same thing we were trying to do. And that's Mkondo Wesizwe. It's very important. Because Mkondo Wesizwe was saying the exact same thing we were saying. That the time for black people to be scattered and fragmented across the political divide is finished. The more scattered we are, the more we cannot come together and fight and defeat the system of white supremacy and colonization. The same thing they did to our forefathers, they were doing to us. But no one was speaking the most important things that we shared as Shiluba as a party. We had a firm understanding of what land is, which is the sole thing we are fighting for as black people in the main. Umhlaba, yini umhlaba? Why do black people fight for land and want land the way that we do? But first you must understand what umhlaba yini, what is land? We argued and still argue that umhlaba is three things. Three things umhlaba. Okungaphansi komhlaba ma minerals. Okungaphezulu komhlaba. And the laws that govern what happens beneath. Then two questions will arise from that statement. Umhlaba wabobani, umthetho wabobani. We had a firm understanding that umhlaba wokhokho bethu under the custodianship and ownership of amakhosi, not the state, amakhosi. Manje umthetho wabobani usetshenziswayo. Masibabona-ke Comrade Utali bakhuluma nama-justices bayuza umthetho wabobani. What happened to the law of jurisdiction? La ngiyakhona ngiyalapho ngizophendula lo mbuzo under this theme ukuthi is leadership and good governance the missing link in Africa's quest for sustainable development? Ngiqala ngokuthi under what system, under what framework, under what laws? There has to be a context that is applicable. Asikwazi ukuthi nje we failing, sifela kanjani na ngomthetho wabobani? So to uplift black people, even the past 30 years has told a sad story about us. We are what we call a democracy. In Tanzania, where majority vote for a party that carries their aspirations and will deliver on those aspirations. At least that's what they think, that's what they've got. It's the same party that cannot pass laws that will give you and me an advantage to prosper. So for an example, I'll get to the leadership part. The system is this constitutional democracy. My response and take on this is from a political perspective. And say, but the first inhibitor for us to get anything is this constitutional democracy we live under. In fact, it's no longer a constitutional democracy, it's a judicial democracy. I'm a judge, you are petty too. The cabinet can be elected by me and you, the majority, and they campaign and tell me and you that we are going to pass a law that says 80% of procurement of the state is going to go to black companies. Let's say again, those who are a minority, who are overpowered legitimately so in cabinet, in government or in parliament, will then go to the court. Then the court will have a view above those who have been elected and say, but this thing is not just, it's not equitable, it's not rational. I need to say them move. If you can't change substantively the politics or the policies that can in fact change and deliver this sustainable development, so we argue, let's deal with that framework. So if you do away with the constitutional democracy, what do you replace it with? Parliamentary sovereignty. Let me explain. Generally, have a fear of parliament sovereignty. Let me tell you why. Because once upon a time it was used against us. They were sharing the parliament sovereignty. Why can't we use the same mechanism to get the sustainable development and not just inclusion but control? Why do you want inclusion and not control? Included in the systems of colonialism and white supremacy instead of creating ours for the control so we can chart our lives better. But now corner 40. Must long as a the system supposed to create a different set of rules. By the way, AUK have parliament sovereignty. New Zealand have parliament sovereignty. So the people who are suggesting to you this thing will not work, they are utilizing it themselves. But in a master aye. But I was saying with system saying is with leadership. The problem with leadership, so because you said it so well, and why isn't the leadership in key? So in public service has become a dumping ground. Whether you're a public representative at a local municipal level, at the parliament level, the worst of the West go and represent us. People who have got no legitimate business to go and represent us. Just the other day you are watching TV and there's a gentleman who was found at someone's residence who was being arrested. So what was he doing there? When he was supposed to be dealing with the rhodes of Johannesburg, or city of Johannesburg, he's at the residence of someone who's a wanted murderer. Journalist. So as he's speaking on TV explaining, he's wearing 2 watches. One worth 1.2 million rand, and another for about between 50,000 and 20,000. So this is the quality of public representatives now, who can go literally walk out of jail one day for a murder, for the house robbery, and then get to represent us in parliament. So I am arguing that the standard for public representative is so low that the worst of the West, the scum of the earth, ends up ascending to come and lead us. What does that do to young people? Now you've got people who come from jail who get on public podium and they share jokes about jail and saying, it's as if it's communicating subliminally to our young people, Oguti, jail is a rite of passage. Now and make it. So we need a different narrative which speaks to quality of leadership. The best amongst us must lead and not the worst amongst us. Now, when you have the worst amongst us who's got no respect for laws and understand and appreciate that you are a servant that must go and represent people in a representative democracy to deliver public goods. No, they understand it narrowly. It's not public goods they must distribute in an equitable manner. They must distribute public goods by their friends and through their friends. So what must become public gain becomes individual gain, and these cartels are born and sustained. So ultimately that erodes good governance. There's no accountability. You can't even extract accountability from them. There's no transparency around how some of these things happen. And the system is rigged to suit their friends and comrades. So when you have the worst of the worst leadership, it erodes your good governance. With your good governance, the outcome is felt through the delivery of the state. What does the state deliver to us? Potholes, load shedding. Load shedding, the consequence effect of load shedding is lack of water. So sustained load shedding, that's why we have this water situation challenges in our country now, with so many water shortages and stop-start, because it's a consequence of electricity. Water relies on energy to pump it, either upstream or downstream. So maunganayo leo energy there to pump it, the pipes are built on sustained pressure. So the moment there's pressure, there's no pressure, there's pressure, there's no pressure, this thing ultimately cracks. And because we are not maintaining enough, the whole thing collapses. So what does that do for sustained development? The question is, for who? Sustainable development. For who? That question is often answered in the current context for the political parties they serve under, for their crony friends and relationships that they are well within and embedded and entrenched in, and for these mafioso states that we're finding across. So this is seriously undermined by, firstly, the system we have in place, the quality of leadership, and ultimately the level of governance and the inability to extract accountability from these leaders. So for Africa to prosper, we need to insist on better quality and qualified leadership. We have a population that is young in our continent, and yet that populace and its aspirations is not represented. Many of us watch these leaders and you think, but what about me? What about us who are not adequately catered for? And I think something needs to change, and we argue firmly that to change it, firstly, is to get involved in politics. Everything is politics. If you don't participate in politics, izoyenza wena. If you don't get involved, you'll be a victim of politics. Price of bread is affected by politics. Price of petrol is affected by politics. Every single thing is affected by politics. So if we don't fix our politics, everything else will not be fixed as a consequence. So we would urge that young people must get involved, because this thing that we are the future, you must stop believing that thing. You are now. If you forego now to do something for your children, which is the future, then you will have to be responsible at the time when they ask you, wawenzani wena? Why ungajoin umzabalazo? Awuhleli wenzani? So let's get involved. The only way we can drive sustainable change is to fix our politics. But equally, most importantly, is the political vehicle that can change the system. Engeke ibe novalo makumele ithinte iconstitution yethu. Ngoba kulona iBhayibheli. Have you ever asked yourself why so many people around the world love our constitution? All these nations from across the world have gathered here. They've got more rights than you, because of this so-called beautiful constitution. What are the democratic dividends that you have yielded over the past 30 odd years or so? As Papa men, Baba Ngamala senzele into enkulu sakhela ikhaya. Usenzele into enkulu sakhela ikhaya. So kuleli khaya sakhele lona Baba Ngamala. Uthi ke wena, be part of your own liberation. Tata umkhonto wena ngokwakho usivikela ngokwakho umkhonto. Asibuyele emuva sithatha into yayona ikuyisekele sethu esivikelayo thina singabantu abamnyama. Siyisebenzise ukuyikhulula kule ngcindezi esibhekane nayo manje. Kwaza umkhonto kwaza. Jikijela umkhonto jikijela. Amandla. Awethu. Amandla. Awethu. Yamemezitsi yadume madlebe iyoleta nyisupa Ione bamsata.
Ione bamsata.
Yameme zinze.
Yameme zinze.
Yatume mazebe. Iole tanyisumba. Iole bamsata.
Ione bamsata.
Esamtatu su.
Esamtatu su.
Esambege pito. Satifuga mshono.
Satifuga mshono.
Uzusate goko.
Uzusate goko.
Amanda.
Awetu.
You right, Bob? Happy. You call in your airport. I'm okay. Yeah.
Now, there were so many, thank you my fellow leaders, there were so many points in the address from Mr. Bongani Boloy, but I think one that I definitely took away is the idea of these isms. These ideas that are borrowed from other lands and countries that inform our sustainable development. And I think it's only fitting that we have an intellectual or an academic as well, Mr. Pedro or Dr. Pedro Mzeleni, to discuss the idea of these isms that inform our political engagement, because I think there is relevance to the philosophies that inform our action. So let me just read Dr. Mzeleni's bio, and will kindly and warmly welcome him to the stage. Dr. Pedro Mzeleni is a senior lecturer in the Department of Sociology at the University of Zululand in South Africa, whose intellectual work and thinking is more focused on the sociologies of Africa, decolonial thought, global higher education studies, and international history. Dr. Mzeleni writes popular columns on these topics for Pambazuka News Africa, Al Jazeera, and Countercurrents Internationals. I have mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. Dr. Mzeleni is one of us, which means that we need to give him the warmest welcome, as he is our former Treasurer General.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. Amanda, how much time do I have? 15 minutes. I'll try my best to stick to below 14 minutes so that we can have a conversation. I was saying to Comrade Ali Bofu earlier on, and he also said that, you know, Pedro, my favorite part is the question and answer session. So I really can't wait to have a conversation with you in the room tonight. So first I want to acknowledge the panel members that I've been joined with. Amase, Dali, and also Ubaloy. I'm meeting all three of them for the first time this evening, and they are a wonderful group of people. It's a pleasure for me and a privilege to be amongst you this evening. I also want to thank the entire leadership of the SRC for organizing this week, for making sure that I traveled all the way from Zululand to Grahamstown. It's a long journey coming that side, so I really appreciate it to be here tonight, and let's hope it was worth it for the conversation that we are going to have. So now get the tournament of Akoya Namhlanje, and the Bulisa, Ubusuku Molweni. I will not repeat everything that has been said before me, but I'll just add a few points for perspective. Primarily, I want to zoom the discussion now down into your immediate context as a student of this university. Because these things that we talk about are actually not in abstraction. They are in your immediate environment. So we're talking tonight, at Cecil John Rhodes University. I think we must mention that because people like to say Rhodes University. It's Cecil John Rhodes University. It's a university named after a rapist. It's a university named after a rapist, a colonizer, a land thief, a thief of the mineral wealth of our people, a mass murderer, a para basically. So, and you remain the only university still named after a colonizer in Africa. About again, I'm a part of being in a university. I say to my students all the time, when you're in a university, you have a responsibility more than anyone else in society to call things by their names. Izinto masibizwe gama gama. When you are also in a university, you have a responsibility to say things that society is not ready to say. You have a responsibility to say things that society is afraid to say. You have a responsibility to clarify things that are not quite clear to society. That is why the university enjoys the name of being called an institution of knowledge production. You can't produce knowledge unless you have the ethics of calling things by their names. So whoever celebrates the name Rhodes University, you lack ethics. Fundamental. You are deeply unethical, because what is ethical about land conquest? What is ethical about land dispossession? What is ethical about the rape of black people by this moron called Cecil John Rhodes? So if you celebrate this name, you are deeply unethical. Now, beteke izinto zibizwa ngamagama. Now, a few years ago in this Cecil John Rhodes University, a young man who was leading a delegation of black students. This young man was 21 years old. He was registered as a medical student at the University of Natal. He attended a conference in this university The conference was hosted by the National Union of South African Students, NUSAS. The conference took place in July 1967. The name of this young man is Bantu Steve Biko. Steve Biko was here in this very campus, 21 years old, meaning he was at your age. And when he arrived at this conference, at the registration table for this NUSAS conference in 1967, they told him that white students who are delegates in this conference will stay in all these residences you see on campus. However, those who are black, they have no choice but to stay in a church off campus or stay in a township. Because Rhodes University does not have a policy of mixing races together. In other words, Rhodes University was the extension of the apartheid policy regime. Biko protested against this at this NUSAS conference, and ultimately he left the conference, this delegation of comrades who were coming from the University of Natal. He offered white students to postpone and call off the conference if indeed they are committed to deracialization. But that delegation of white students refused and continued with the conference. In other words, Cecil John Rhodes University was never established for black students. It was never established for black people. In its conceptualization, it never had a black person in mind. Cecil John Rhodes University was rather established as an extension of British society. It is a secular university to the core. Therefore, Cecil John Rhodes University can never be regarded as an institution with potential for decolonization. It will never be an institution that is receptive to radical black feminist ideas, to black consciousness ideas, to ideas that seek to build the pan-African unity of African people in this continent and the rest of the world. The university was not established or built for the purpose of advancing such ideas. Now, obviously, whenever a colonial system runs, or whenever a colonial system begins, the decolonial process also begins at the same time. You cannot abuse and oppress people and expect no response. Many struggles were waged in the Cape, which is this region that we are in. The struggles were waged by everyone. The students have waged the struggles. The women's movement has also waged these struggles. In fact, the biggest march ever recorded in the 20th century in this part of the world was a march led by black women on the 9th of August 1956, the women's movement. So, the oppressed have always been together side by side waging struggles against colonial systems. Those are the credentials we have as a people. But one thing you must keep in mind, whenever colonial systems are challenged, whenever they face danger, whenever they are about to die, they actually do not die completely. Instead, they improvise. In other words, you must not think that 1994 in South Africa was actually the end of the colonial system. Instead, 1994 was the moment where the colonial system was put under pressure by progressive anti-colonial forces. And all that it did, it mutated from the physical structure and it moved into the invisible structures. So in other words, Before 94, you had billboards all around Grahamstown that was saying whites only. You had a campus policy that was written and clear that said whites only. But after 94, it is no longer physical and also in your face. Instead, it has mutated now. It is found in institutions, in policies, in finance, and most importantly, in knowledge and also in the mindsets of people. That is why, therefore, the colonial system, represented by Cecil John Rhodes University as a British institution, it does not mind allowing black students to come into the colonial institution. It has no problem with having black faces who are its representatives, right? In other words, physically, you might be black in color and inside the colonial system, but spiritually, socially, and how you feel exactly that this dinosaur and demon of whiteness is actually not dead, it has multiplied. So at Rhodes University, you might be black students in huge numbers. The room might be full of black people. But the demonic spirit of whiteness, what it does is, even in a room full of black students, when you want to speak your mind and express your frustrations about this university, you still, as a black student, have to find the correct words to use to express you are forced to come up with the best English to express your black frustration so that it does not offend the feelings of white people right now. You self-oppress your soul in order to make whiteness feel comfortable in the institution. So in other words, the colonial system has moved in the physical space. It is now in the spirit and also in the mindsets of the oppressed. What then this disease does, it creates what is called a double consciousness on black students. Malcolm X framed and simplified this for us, and he said, in an environment of oppression, there comes two types of Negroes, the field Negro and the house Negro. The house Negro is that black person who seeks to be accommodated into white systems, who wants to speak English better than the master, who wants to use opportunities and institutions availed in a colonial system in order for them to have a safe landing after they graduate. Essentially, it's that black person who is invited to colonial white systems and they begin to feel like they're no longer part of black people's problems. You have to ask yourself then, as a student who is black and registered at Rhodes University, when you go back home to those black people who didn't have the opportunity to come to Rhodes, do you feel better than them or do you feel that you are still part of them? If you feel better than them simply because you have a student card from the colonial university, then you are part of the house Negroes. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is, the purpose of education is not for you, for your own self-enrichment, for your own individual upward mobility at the expense of others. The purpose of education is to change the conditions of society so that they work for everyone. In other words, we want to produce young people with a revolutionary consciousness who will go to society to change its conditions for the better. Not young people who seek validation in colonial white systems. You must always refuse to be a house Negro. At all material times, you must aspire to be a field Negro. A field Negro is different. A field Negro, I think about Sizawulalaphi. A field Negro seeks to create a community of black people, the oppressed. It seeks to end the fragmentation and the divisions amongst black people. It sees itself as a permanent member of problems of black people for the purpose of resolving them. In other words, as I now conclude, because I'm now left with 2 minutes. I'm now left with 2 minutes. Maybe let me leave these 2 points and then we can continue during the question and answer session. The first thing you must do as a black young person is to reject mainstream thought. The so-called hegemonic, normalized, liberal ideas. You must do that precisely because you are in a university. A university is a site of struggle. A university is a place for you to experiment with different ideas, to remain curious, especially about the concepts and philosophies produced by your own people, so that you build further on them and begin to understand that there's no Chinese wall between the past, the present, and the future. All these forces are interconnected. In fact, this is one force that now you have been called as a generation to form part of. In other words, reject mainstream ideas. And the liberal university as it stands, it is very guilty of producing an education system that seeks to liquidate the consciousness of young people. Yes. The education system that says all that you must worry about, right, is the diploma disease. In other words, memorize Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday in order to write your exam on Saturday. After that exam, you've forgotten what you're memorizing because your focus is on getting on stage to get your degree without the love for knowledge. Right? So search for the certificate by all means necessary, even if you don't understand what you were learning. Even if you don't love knowledge itself. Right? So the rejection of mainstream thought is very important because it's the very same system that seeks to make us laborers and not human beings. Lastly, understand that whenever this country was in trouble, it has always been rescued by young people. I made this point 2 weeks ago when I was invited to the Frederick Ebert Stiftung workshop. That one of the achievements of Steve Biko's ideas, the Black consciousness philosophy, his profound achievement was the 1976 June 16 movement. That movement sent a strong message to all of you in this room that whenever this country is in trouble, it is always rescued by its young people, particularly students. But you won't be able to do that unless you're conscious of yourself. Right? And being conscious of yourself is the moment where you finally know who you are. And once you're conscious of yourself, and you know who you are, you will never again be in bondage. Because people who are conscious and who know who they are people who are free. And people who are free, they don't ask or beg for their freedom. They simply take their freedom. So you must not take for granted
what the system is doing to ensure that the minds of young people are disturbed and corrupted on a daily basis. It's a deliberate action by the white system to make sure that you as black young people are constantly liquidated of your consciousness so that you don't know who you are. So the traffic of alcohol and drugs on campuses and townships amongst young people is not an accident. The system wants to infiltrate all platforms of young people to make sure that they don't think about important things. They must constantly be in competition with each other about meaningless things. They don't want you to get to a point where you are together, you are united, and you are thinking about the revolutionary changes for your own benefit. The system therefore infiltrates popular culture, it infiltrates knowledge, it infiltrates a public consciousness to make sure that young people are not conscious so that they are free from bondage, from knowing exactly who they are, so that they can think as themselves for their own liberation. So in a parting shot, as I therefore sit down, let's have a conversation about this issue, and let's fight for our freedom and take our freedom ourselves, because nobody else is going to give it to us. And when we are a people who are conscious and free, I repeat, we won't beg or ask for freedom. We will simply take our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mzaleni. It's always an intellectual delight. And usually I've been touching on a few things that every speaker has said, but I think Dr. Mzaleni said it all. And I think I'd rather leave it for the room to further engage with him when it's time for our Q&A sessions. Now, it's time for our keynote address. And in order for us to read the bio of Advocate Darlene Mpofu, our senior counsel, I'd like to kindly call to the stage our activism and transformation counselor, Luazi.
Greetings to the House at large. Igamani Mulwazi. I am your Activism and Transformation Counselor. So I'm looking at the time, and it is 1952, and I do understand that we are students before we are leaders. It is a Monday, it is school Monday. So for some words of encouragement, I'd like you to look to the person next to you, and please repeat after me. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be difficult. But I'm gonna do it. Thank you. Alright, so before I introduce Lumhlekazi, Mr. Mamanditi, this man is a highly respected South African senior counsel and legal strategist. Now, he is known for his sharp intellect, eloquence, and commitment to justice. Ditigua, he holds law degrees. Degrees, I tell you, from the University of Wits, and has built a distinguished legal career representing clients in some of the country's most significant constitutional and human rights cases. Listen, Ditigua, he rose to national prominence for his advocacy on behalf of the Marikana mine workers, and later represented high-profile figures, including Jacob Zuma and Mosisiya Gobebana. He served as an CEO of the SABC and held leadership roles in both business and civil society, earning awards for his contribution to transformation and media. He is a former ANC and EFF leader. Our leader, he has been places. Yeah. So he joined the MK party in 2024, continuing his lifelong dedication to social justice and political reform in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, and to all my people who do not identify zealous leaders, I'd like to introduce to you Advocate Dalingo.
Oscar.
Thank you very much, facilitator, comrade facilitator. I would like to recognize my fellow panelists and thank them so much for making my job easy. I don't think I have to say anything, they've covered everything. Let's give them a... I also want to recognize some of the leadership that has accompanied me here, starting with our national elections coordinator has already mesmerized you with his speech. Commander Baloyi, let's give him another round. Then we have Commander Mawande Ndakisa, who's our provincial coordinator. You can just wave. Asanda Kubeka, who's our national fundraiser. Tembelani, Taylor, Deputy President. SRC-TG. Sesetu Macholo Media Council. And last but not least, the future leader of this place, Kanya Tretile. Right. But more importantly, I want to recognize all of you here from your various institutions, all the students, there are also visitors from PE who accompanied me from the university. They are also running for elections next, is it next week? Soon, yeah. Okay, so NMMU, our MKSM from there, let's recognize all of them. And greetings to the fighters there. I see the answer to you is no. Sure. Yeah, I think if the question that is asked is leadership and good governance the missing link in Africa's quest for sustainable development? So that should make for the shortest speech in the history of speeches. Yes. And then I should go and sit down. But because you get set up by being called a keynote speaker, so you have to say something more than just yes. So I'll say a few things, but the answer to that, as the speakers have said, is obviously a yes. But this topic, really, I am very happy that I have to deliver it to you because, a long, long time ago, I was a student leader like you. Here we had something called the Black Student Movement in the 80s. And at Wits, where I was a student, we had something called the Black Student Society. And I was the president of the Black Student Society. A long time ago, I'm sure very few people were born when I was in that position. And that was because of what Pedro was saying. These places were called white universities. And we were supposed to get ministerial consent. In other words, a white minister would sift and see whether you can study there. And the only reason I was accepted to study at Wits is because I registered to study engineering, which was not available in Fort Hare, because they would have said I must study in Fort Hare. Now, I'm saying that because in your topic you talk about leadership, and leadership probably is the most important word in the entire topic that has been presented to me. Some of the big topics coming from the bigger topic are, apart from leadership, governance, something about the continent of Africa, and lastly, sustainable development that Amahle covered so well. So I'm going to try to kind of weave those things together. Because each one of them really is worthy to be a topic in its own right. Let's start with what you've called governance. Now, governance is a nice person's, or the lack of governance is a nice person's expression for corruption. So let's call it like it is. As Pedro said. So lack of governance is just a nice English expression. But lack of governance really means lack of accountability and lack of, and corruption and fraud and all those things. Yeah, okay, I was told there was someone from the ANC here. So I'm sure they know all about corruption. Ouch. Sorry, no, I didn't mean it like that. All right. Now, so corruption, if you take it back to that question, is indeed one of the things that has set us back as a continent, as a country, as a people, as anything that you can think of. You were referred to the condition of Makanda, which we all see on a daily basis. Most of what is responsible for the lack of development in those localities is indeed corruption, or if you want to be nice, lack of governance. But the problem is much deeper than all these things. It's much, much deeper, and I'll demonstrate right now. It starts with what Pedro was talking about, of why this place is called Rhodes. And this is a challenge that I want to put to you. You must never leave this place and graduate and leave it still called Rhodes. Because if you do that, then as it was said, you lack leadership. You know what leadership is? Leadership is finding something and leaving it better than the way you found it. That's real leadership. If you get into any situation, whether it's a job or whatever, or leading a soccer team, it doesn't matter what it is. And you are going to be given an opportunity to lead that thing, then you must leave it in a better position than where you found it. So the community around here has already done that by changing the name of Grahamstown to Makanda. So this place had a double blow of being called Rhodes and found in Grahamstown. You know who Graham was? Graham was a colonial military strategist, a lieutenant colonel in the British Army, who established a military base here around 1812. And his claim to fame was that he chased more than 20,000 Xhosa people from here. This place was called the Zierveld, and created that military garrison, or whatever they call it. So one was standing in a place that is littered with filth, and that is why it was called Rhodes in Grahamstown, as if that was not enough coloniality to call it under Cecil John Rhodes. Now, the problem, comrades of mine, did not start with those kinds of characters who then ended up creating apartheid for us. The problem of this continent and why it is underdeveloped started a long time ago, but that problem was consolidated in a conference called the Berlin Conference, which took place in 1884 in Germany. Do we know about the Berlin Conference? Yes. Thank you. That conference took place from 1884 and ended in 1885. It was a place where our continent was carved out into 50 entities to suit the sensibilities of European colonizers. Now, just picture that wherever you come from, you either come from a village or a township or a place. Now imagine if me and my friends here on the panel, 10 or 12 of us, decide to go and hold a conference in some place and decide how your village is going to be cut out, and this part is going to be mine, this part will be Amahle, this other part will be Bongani, the other one will be Pedro's part. Without involving you, without asking you, and you say this one is going to be called Amahle land, this one will be called Bongani land, and so on. That's what happened in 1884. So you had Europeans deciding what Africa should look like depending on which part they wanted to colonize. Now that question is linked to leadership because, again, we said leadership is leaving a place in a better place than where you found it. Your generation has a mission to make sure that that work that was done, the underdevelopment of Africa, which was done in 1884, is undone. And I will explain just now how that can be undone. The two things that anybody who wants to colonize you, such as was done by those people in 1884, is to ensure that you don't have proper leadership. And by leadership, it means those people who are going to fight against the system that they are imposing. The second and most important thing is to ensure that you are never going to achieve unity. Because lack of leadership, or leadership that is bought, that is corrupt, that is made to feel to be a multi-dollar billionaire, like some leaders whose names we won't mention. Yeah, that one. So, if you are that kind of leader, or a house negro, as Malcolm X would say, then you are going to be the darling of the colonizers, right? The second thing is that if you talk about African unity, or the unity of the oppressed, or the unity of those who want to come out of that condition, then you are the enemy. You must be killed, you must be jailed, you must be dethroned, And that's what happened to leaders in this continent, like Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, and anybody who wanted genuine African unity and genuine African freedom. And those other leaders, including, yes, that one, will be rewarded, protected by the system, made not to account for anything, and given a lot of money. So again, you have to choose which kind of leader you are going to be. The people who identify this continent as a home for all of us. The last leader of that caliber was our brother leader, Muammar Gaddafi. Where is he now? He was killed like an animal in broad daylight a few years ago because he was talking about a united Africa. He was talking about a single currency, a single army, and therefore he had to go. Now, Gaddafi was killed by guns which were sponsored by the United States of America. That United States of America that now wants to lecture us about an imaginary white genocide. Why is African unity a threat to sustainable development? Just think about it. It is better for those who do not want us to develop that we are divided into these small pieces called this and that and the other, and we fight among each other and have all sorts of Afrophobic ideas and so on, than if we were one entity. In the world right now, the superpowers of blocks. In fact, Africa should be the #1 superpower or superbloc. Currently, we have what we call the Western world. It has about 1 billion people or slightly more. China, which is by anybody's description a superpower and a superbloc, has currently close to roughly 1.5 billion people, right? India has been competing with China. It also has about 1.5 billion people. Africa has also 1.5 billion. But we will never feel the power of the 1.5 billion people in terms of human capacity, buying power, and all those things. Why? Because we are supposed to think in small numbers of 20 million here, 30 million here, 40 million there, and never realize the full power of the continent. That you can't have sustainable development of any description in that model. It's never going to happen. So the first task is to undo the colonial borders that were imposed by the 1884 conference and liberate the mind, as Biko would say. Because some of these things look unimaginable because, you know, you found it like this. We found it like this. We found South Africa, Mozambique, and all those things. So who are we to try and change it? But from you as young people, we need imagination, we need leadership that is futuristic. Now, to undo any notion of proper leadership, African unity, you have to prop up leaders, so-called leaders, Abanga Doli or Onopopi, and puppets, literally, you know, a puppet. a puppet master stands here and you do this and the puppet goes like this. Then you press here, it goes like this. Then you press here, it goes as if it's talking. But actually it's the puppet master who's in charge. And that's the kind of leaders that are needed by these people. Now, what I want to do is to then go into what I call the positive side. The positive side is that you have the future in your hands. I would give anything to be in your possession, in your position. Some of us, we were activists and sitting in and being beaten up by old people when we were 16, 17 years old. Even younger than you sitting here. And activism, it has been what has sustained the dream. And I urge all of you, as was done by my fellow panelists, to ensure that you must believe in something, man. There can't be nothing in life that you are prepared to die for. It can't be. There must be something that you believe in so much. It could be anything. It could be gender-based violence, the fight against gender-based violence, fight against corruption, or all the social ills that we experience in our societies. But you can't just live, just be born, go to university, get a job, and go. Because the problems of this continent are so dire that each and every one of us is needed to give their 2 pennies worth. So what is the positive that I'm talking about? Right now, we are living in probably one of the most interesting times on this continent. And the hope has been brought by young people in what is now known as the Sahel region, led by that Ibrahim Traore. Now that is a leader. And I think even from far, wherever he is, we can just say, we salute you, Traore, we salute you. Why do we salute somebody like Traore? It is because instead of getting into a leadership position and wanting to do it just the way it has been done, he was able to say, no, I'm going to chase away France from my country. Now that's a big thing, because the people of Burkina Faso have not known a life without dependency on France, or the people of Niger, or the people of Mali. What has happened? Do yourself a favor as students. Go and research the changes that have happened in Burkina Faso, in Mali and Niger, just from the single decision to chase away the colonizers that they thought they were so dependent on. Now suddenly, their minerals belong to them. Now suddenly their minerals are able to educate their own children and to feed their own people. Just because of leadership, nothing else. Because they would have been trapped in that dependency on France had we not have leaders with vision. So you have a responsibility among you sitting here to produce the Traores of today and the Traores of tomorrow, to make sure that our continent is liberated from the yoke of colonialism. So it might start with a small project, such as changing the name of this place, but it must go to a project that will cover the entire continent. You are the future, and nobody can stop you. The time has never been better, and for us to develop that ability to unite our nation, to unite our people. I am particularly pleased that you can sit here in this hall from different political organizations. That is something, there is nothing that makes me sleep at night than to see black people united in whatever form. Because our disunity is the biggest weapon in the hands of the enemy. It is something that they invest in. And the color of your t-shirt cannot define your consciousness. If you are going to be a slave to that, then you don't know what we're talking about here. If you are going to worship your political party and say that your political party, Umkhonto weSizwe, is the only party that can liberate you, there's no such thing. That's a lie. There's no party that can be the only one that can liberate us. We are our own liberators. Because what is a political party, Ekek? What is that? These are things that we, that facilitate, that should be facilitating our freedom. These are things that we use as methods to fight our struggle. But we can't worship those things because they themselves are not freedom. In fact, there's a political party in this country that goes around saying it liberated us. That's another lie. The people of South Africa liberated themselves. I was there. Yes, it was important to have, literature and direction and so on. But there's nobody who liberated us. No one. One day I'll come and tell you some of the methods that we had to use to liberate ourselves. When there was no political, in fact, the political parties were not even allowed to exist. So let's spread this message of hope and let's answer the real question. So the question you gave us was, is leadership and good governance the missing link in Africa's quest for sustainable development? And I've given a one-word answer to that. That is not the question. The question is, how are we going to unite our people? Not unity, paper unity of shaking hands in front of TV cameras. Unity in action. How are we going to unite and make sure that our people emphasize what binds us more than that which divides us? And that question for political activists is captured in a question which was asked by Lenin many years ago. And that question was, where are the students of humanities? What is to be done? That is the only question facing us as Africans, as humanity, as people, and that will liberate this continent and get us to its true potential. The question is, what is to be done? And one day, I hope you will invite me to come here and explain what I think should be done. And maybe, hopefully in the Q&A, you can tell us what you think should be done in order to get us out of the mess that we find ourselves because of poor leadership, because of leaders who allow themselves to be puppets of the colonizers, because the original sin in this continent is colonization. Thank you very much.
ask our Qs and get our A's. So I think just to sum up what Advocate has shared with us, it's the idea that we need to champion transformative change in our spaces and then coming towards a collective liberation for our own being. So transcending the idea of party politics. Sustainable development also requires us to look back and redress societal changes to bring about good governance. So I think the idea that we have this intergenerational dialogue is very important to find out what did previous generations do and what can our generation do to also find our own liberation. So, for the Q and the A's. I first would like to just set some ground rules. So I see, we are all leaders in our own capacity, so can I just ask that we all respect the next person, and when someone's on the floor, we allow them to speak, right? I'm going to do 3 rounds, and in those 3 rounds, I will take about 5 hands, because sometimes questions may all have the same answer or similar answers, right? Leaders, also please allow yourselves to be captured because time is not on our side, right? So, I will start off with, yes, over there. And then I'll go to Mr. Chair, and then I'll go to Paul. And then I'll go to Mr. SRC, and then I'll go to our ward councillor. Are we captured by that?
Okay, can I start now?
Yes, you may.
Okay, I hope this question doesn't offend anyone. I've written it down because I thought I was going to forget it, so I hope it's not spammed. In the talks today, it was mentioned that the problem would not go away, but it's changed, right? Is that not what's happening right now? Lately, politicians pander to the youth for votes, and when it's done, you move on to cripple us at every shape and form. The youth must stand up. It's one of the most selfish things you have ever said, because you cut us down and you use buzzwords to make us angry. It's not to negate the struggles of the past and the oppression that we have faced, but we cannot sit here, and say that the same politicians and leaders that point to blame the white man when things go wrong are not the same politicians that steal from us, kill us, watch women and children get raped, and do nothing but hold visuals for us. You guys suppress us at every single corner. Also, what has become the difference between you and the scary right man you talk about and you use to continuously make us angry? We as a youth cannot save ourselves even from you, yet we are constantly asked to save the world. You are the leaders right now. Why are you not doing anything?
Thank you so much. Chair? I don't know. Okay.
Greetings, professional critics leaders. I am the chair of the FFYC in this institution. So, Advocate Talibo, you mentioned that leadership is ensuring that we don't leave a place the way it is, and that we must not be scared to be activists, right? And Dr. Pedro also emphasized that essentially we are not house Negroes, but field Negroes rejecting mainstream thought. Now the question is, how do we then practice such principles in institutions like ours that use exclusionary systems and need to become revolutionary?
Thank you, my leaders. Thank you. I think just go to Mzo and then we'll come down this way for the sake of just logistics.
Thank you very much, President. Let's welcome the presentations that would have been done by the panelists. Of course, without the strategic intervention that would have been done by Dr. Pedro and of all trades, one would have thought we're in an MK rally. Where we are reduced to political teletubbies of example like them on the matter of parliamentary sovereignty that we differ fundamentally on. Because it was through parliamentary sovereignty that Steve Biko was killed. It was through parliamentary sovereignty that Hector Peterson was killed. It was through parliamentary sovereignty that Krisa was murdered. So really we must reject the proposal that we must move from constitutional democracy to parliamentary sovereignty. It seems that the FKP is a mirror image of the National Party of de Klerk and PW. And out of the struggles that would have emanated against parliamentary sovereignty, the liberation movement would have then, and the broad progressive front of the mass democratic movement, would have called for what we call a national democratic revolution. That was underpinned fundamentally by
Project Comrade.
Every time project, I've never been a software and make an attempt. I'm saying that the National Democratic Revolution offers a better life for all. That is underpinned fundamentally by a constitutional democracy. We have been asked to reimagine
what we now speak about when we speak of reimagining African governance. Must be a rejection really of the political rhetoric that we have had here in this rally. The second point, Chair, on the matter of corruption as a cancer to society. And we indeed agree that corruption is a cancer to society. Hence, many institutions would have been collapsed in the 9 wasted years of Jacob Zuma, your president. So, and the state of municipalities today are as a result of a decade of governance, as led by your president Jacob Zuma. So really, the political attacks coming from a failed political career and a failing law career is really matters that we don't take. But the last point is the matter that I think it was Comrade Pedro and Advocate Darlene Bofu would have raised as well, that indeed the history of this country is littered with young people being at the center of transformation, particularly students. That is indeed true, and we really want to make a call that indeed, as a generation of young people in this country, we must therefore unite to reimagine African governance, to reimagine the role of youth in governance, so that we can achieve what Utaka of all trades says, that if the generation that has collapsed institutions cannot move, we as young people must move them, so that we can lead towards economic freedom in our lifetime. Thank you.
My leaders, can we just be with me in this moment? Can I kindly ask that we are as direct as possible with our questions for the sake of time? Because I recognize that there was a lot of hands that were up and I don't want to suppress any voices. So when we're posing our questions to the panelists, Please can we try to be as concise as possible so we can have as many questions that are brought forward.
Not statements.
Manda, wetu, Manda, wetu, isolate. Africa. Thank you very much, comrades. My name is Shem Digi. I'm the longest serving Secretary General at Sulu University. Advocate, I'll be very short like a miniskirt. I just want to answer 3 questions of what should be done. I will answer it at the level of student leadership and student activists. What needs to be done, to be honest, is us defining our generational mission as this youth. Because the reality is that we are at our own. No one is going to liberate us as the youth. No one is going to give us free quality education. No one is going to give us land unless we take it. So, I just want to answer that question. 2, Udok raised very critical issues here. And I will call you, Doc, a very good doctor. You know, we were here last year in this kind of program, which is the Leadership Week. We raised this thing of Rhodes University. And as the delegation that was here, we made our contributions. And till today, and Gaboni action, where's our contributions as that? So as the part of the leader who was part of the delegations that made contributions last year in the Leadership Week, I declare now that Rhodes University is no longer Rhodes University, but still Biko University. Thank you very much.
My name is Paul Pulukholo, and I'm an honors candidate at the Politics Department. We have spoken about corruption, billions, all sorts of stuff. But I just want to take us back to the P itself. It's harmony beyond borders, navigating peace and security. We can, but the issue of security and peace is at the center of Africa. We can look at the economic community of West African states. Its formation was looking into economic growth in West Africa, but then they got to realize that there's security of West Africa is a threat, and we have been addressed it in this kind of panel. So my question, I dropped this 2 questions here for you, Dr. Dalipo, to speak about African unity. Is that can we envision a joint ECOWAS, SADC, and African Union task force that shares intelligence and coordinates military responses? Also, and what would that require politically and financially in addressing the issue of peace and security in Africa? Thank you.
All right. Firstly, thank you so much for the wonderful questions that have been posed to the panel. I will only respond to 2 because of time, and then hand over them to the rest of the panel. Furthermore, if I don't get to your question, we can have a conversation afterwards or keep in touch on social media, but the conversation has to go on because ordinarily these platforms are always limited in terms of time. I always try to make time for engagement with students by all means necessary. So how do we use these ideas we've tabled today to advance these changes we want to see in a university that weaponizes exclusion to basically chuck out students who are questioning the system? And I'm going to marry it with the question asked earlier on. I know it was not to get your name, sorry, with the blue. Samsung. Yeah. I don't think it was necessarily directed at me, but I think I will just try to marry the two. So, firstly, the university, right? It is able to target you and exclude you, especially in a context where students are divided, right? So, and Rhodes University and the University of the Free State, where I used to teach, they are very common in how they use that strategy. And I'm sure you know my personal story, my physical battles with the University of the Free State, and it was all over the news in 2023. And I fought the battle all the way to the end. We were involved on 3 high-level cases, and I butchered them in all 3 cases, 3 names. So, I will never be shaken by whiteness. White people are a footnote in my life. I do what I want. I teach what I want. I say what I want according to my own terms because this is my land. So, what I'm trying to say to you, the system, it gains currency and courage to exclude students on an environment where students are divided, right? So long as you are not a united group that is conscientized about the common struggle you all face as black students, then your fellow comrades will continue being targeted by the system. The university will never exclude anybody if all students revolt at the same time. So read the very same recent history of your own peers. The 2015 Rhodes Must Fall, Fit Must Fall movement. It showed all of you in this room what happens when black students are united under a common program. They become untouchable when they are in community, and they make significant changes when they are in community. We are speaking today of some form of an expanded access to higher education, primarily because of the breakthroughs that were delivered by that community of students in 2015. So emulate them and always try to be community. Lastly, it brings now to this name, Rhodes University. Do you know what is primarily the problem when you say in a room full of black people that we need to change this name of Rhodes into something else? And then you say, right? The reason for that, the primary reason for that, right? Black people across generations have been dehumanized to a point where they no longer believe that they are human, right? And the only option, Shem, they have left, right? Because you see, when the system butchers you to a point where you really believe that you are not human, right? You are subhuman. You are close to an animal in essence, right? Those who are made to believe that they are not human, right?
their only means of survival in such a brutal white society is only for them to submit themselves as labor, right? So all black people now are looking for in a state of landlessness and dispossession is to look for the nearest qualification that they can get so that they can be labor in this white system to survive. So Rhodes University is a representation of that white global system of opportunity and labor. And they can't imagine life outside of that white core global system. So coming to them, so for them coming to a university, they think that it keeps getting cut, man. Can I get another one? And the funny thing is, when there was liberalism being spoken in the morning,
I got it.
Well, when we talk about important things concerning black people, mics all of a sudden stop working. So people, they don't necessarily come to university for a qualification for the love of knowledge to change society. Because if that was the motivation, you would have gone anywhere. But the thought process is, for me to fit in a white society, my qualifications needs to carry a specific name, right? And that name is the name of the Rhodes, a colonizer and a slaughter of my own people, right? To a point where now Cecil John Rhodes is not even regarded as a colonizer and a rapist in the popular imagination. His name now represents some funds and excellence and all this rubbish. That has nothing to do with who he actually is, right? So you need black people to move to the state of actually realizing that they are human and realizing who they are. And then there will be a generation that will see that this name is actually no longer relevant. It needs to change into something else, right? And the Rhodes fell at university, right? And Rhodes will also fall in this institution. It might not happen today, it might not happen tomorrow, it might not happen next month, it might not happen in the next decade, but trust me, it is going to happen.
Thank you so much for the questions. I'll answer, I think, one of the questions from our brother from the ANC over there. It's very interesting how you understand the parliament sovereignty versus our constitutional democracy. Maybe it was my fault not to adequately describe the two and explain why and how are they different. The current constitutional democracy is a system that we currently utilize where the legislative side of parliament is not the final decision maker in terms of laws that are passed. The judiciary is the final decision maker in this case. So in parliament sovereignty, once parliament has made a law, has made a decision, it becomes final and binding. There is then no safety mechanism to deal with the substance of the policy, but rather you can contest the process of enacting or approving such a law. Why is the one better than the other in our view? So let's go a few years back. When you're saying the system then killed all of our people, I don't think you've got a healthy relationship with the truth. So you must also understand a few things. I'm quite surprised that a black person in this day and age can still associate with the AIDS. Just out of language. Number two, I'm making a point. So we have all appreciated what the democracy over 3 decades has delivered in terms of democratic dividends for all of us. Black people are still on the economic fringes and margins. Black people, majority young people, are unemployed and unemployable. And Stats SA says to us, if you get to the age of 32 and you've not been employed, you become unemployable. So your chance of ever finding gainful employment diminishes significantly. If you go into any informal settlements, you'll find majority young people, you'll find majority women who are carrying toddlers who should be in early childhood development, and they're charging water back and forth. You'll find the level of poverty and inequality has increased significantly. And you ask yourself, what is the point of this constitutional democracy that has not delivered substantive gains towards or for the betterment of our people? And you can say it's leadership, which would agree with you, but we'll also make the point that it is the system that inhibits the type of meaningful redress towards Black people. Still, now we're talking about land redistribution. This constitution puts limitations on how we can do so. So it's quite important to understand that politics is about power. If you don't consolidate power, you cannot deliver on your promised agenda, or your reason, or your existential reason for existence as a political party. So this constitutional democracy was a negotiated settlement. And the product of often these negotiated settlements is that you forego very important things that can enable you to deliver to your people as quickly as possible. Instead, you had people who have now presided over the same system, which was a product of compromise, which has effectively given those who were presiding over the system that subjugated millions of Black people the advantage to still continue by co-opting other Black people who look like me and you, who are part of the system and benefiting to the exclusion of many of us. So I really think we must understand that and realize that we're at a point where we need not just inclusion, we want control as well. And we must not be shy to say it.
Sorry, I'm used to talking while I'm standing. I think let's start with Nomatam San. Nomatam San, I don't understand. But when you say why we're not doing anything, I don't know what that means. Because doing something is what we do. Some of us for the past 40, 50 years, we've been doing something. And that something is to, for example, be here and talk to you and engage you as a young person and give a bit of historical perspective and so on. That's doing something, it's not doing nothing. It might not be the thing you like, but it's not doing nothing. So it's important to, it's called nihilism. The idea that we must do nothing because it's so bad, the situation is so bad, there have been bad leaders, they want us to be angry and so on. Fine, but then what? We must do nothing. We must just accept our condition. No. The only way to organize, to change society is to mobilize people, organize them, unite them into a force, as was said before. That, if take a trade union, when you are in a workplace, that place is inherently, the bosses have more power. But if you are able to organize a trade union or whatever association, then the power of uniting the people is what will change the situation. Because each one of us, even if we are 1 million, will be able to change the situation on our own. That's what changes societies. Societies change because of action, not because of words and nice pronouncements, but action, action of people. So, and somebody wanted to know what must be done in a place like Rhodes. How do you change the system? I think it was you over there. A system that you find yourself in this kind of bondage. Well, my only advice is be a rebel. Okay? Because if you conform to the system is extremely, but extremely sophisticated. You can't touch it, but it is there. It is there to condition your mind, to condition your thinking, to condition your ambitions, to condition literally everything about you. That's why it's called a system. And if you work according to the rules of the system, you're never going to succeed. Because the rules of the system are designed to keep you where you are. So if you want to change me, and then you allow me to tell you, no, look, if you want to change me, you must come at 4 o'clock. Don't come at 6 when I'm sleeping. Because, then it means what you must then do is to come at 6 o'clock if you really want to cause change. Because I can't define the rules of how you must defeat me, myself. And that's what we have done as black people. So you must just, it's like this issue that was spoken about of black people whose mission in life is to seek white approval. There's no more dangerous black person than that. Because all they want to do is because the only reason why you can get white approval is because you are operating within the white paradigm. In other words, to keep things as they are. It goes to this issue about this constitution that is now being venerated here. You must wonder the day when the minority that oppressed you for so many years says the best thing that has ever happened is the constitution. That's when you must be worried. When the DA and all those people say we must protect this constitution with everything we have, that's when you must worry that there's something wrong with this constitution. Because and now it's painful. It really is painful to get the comrade there. Really, my brother, I love you very much. That's all I can say. But I feel very sorry for, if you think the best contribution you can make in a gathering like this is to insult people at a personal level, then I love you very much. Then I love you even more. It's not like that. You can't do that, comrades. You can't. You can't stand up in a gathering, a serious gathering of this, where we're talking about young people, and play cheap polemics about, this one is tall, this one is short, this one is this. It's and it is bankruptcy of the West order to think that we are busy seriously here telling you about the roots of our problems, which come from colonialism, which come from Rhodes, which come from Graham, which come from all those people, and the system. And you think all our problems come from Jacob Zuma? Yo. Really, what kind of shallowness can we have here? But that's fine. You know, the issue about parliamentary sovereignty, comrade. We were not struggling against parliamentary sovereignty. We are wrong about that. We were struggling against an oppressive system. The fact that that oppressive system organized itself in the form of parliamentary sovereignty is neither here nor there. The United States of America, the most oppressive regime you can ever imagine, is a constitutional democracy. So it's not those labels, all those things are irrelevant. The issue is not the terms and the terminology and the text. The issue, you come from the African National Congress, which adopted the Freedom Charter in 1955. It actually adopted it in 1956. The charter itself was adopted in 1955. What is the first clause of that Freedom Charter? The people shall govern. But yours must be saying the judges shall govern. Because that's what happens when you have a constitutional democracy. It means the power of the people themselves will surrender their power to 10, 1, 3, 11 at most people. And that is not the people shall govern. It is the courts shall govern. But anyway, maybe one day we'll be able to engage that when you are ready to do that. What is to be done? Somebody described it nicely. You know, it's a generational mission. I love that. That's what Frantz Fanon said. Frantz Fanon, one of the greatest African thinkers, said that every generation has its mission, and it will either fulfill it or betray it. And that's all I can say about what is to be done. The unity, the military and security strategy. I think, as they say, comrade, you got the wrong memo. That was not our topic. But now that you've raised it, you are quite right. Peace and security is at the center, and that's why Gaddafi was strong about this thing, not just of a common currency, but a common army as well. Because peace and security, the ability to defend, the gains that you have is part of this, by the way. And you are quite right, because one of the ways in which this continent is destabilized is through that exactly. The wars, the so-called internecine wars within Africa. In some of our countries, which are so poor, it is easier to get a machine gun than to get a meal. Anybody can access a machine gun so that you can shoot and kill the next person. But you can't get food. And that is a function of what I was describing, where the imperialists are prepared to sponsor. They can give all of us here, sitting here, machine guns, so that we shoot each other. Those insults will be nothing compared to what they can do when they give you guns. But they won't give you the wherewithal to develop yourself. And that is what is wrong with this picture. So my only message really, comrades, is that do not do what that person is doing. Please, whatever you do, embrace, love, unite with your people. Okay? It does not mean we will never agree on everything. We are different people. We have to differ. Also, that is part of our development. But let us please accentuate that which unites us than that divides us, if we want to get out of our colonial condition. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. I did ask Marcia, and Marcia said she was speak in the next round. I'm about to step back into my Speaker of Student Parliament bag, right? Which means that in order for us to time you, because today is a school night, and we need to be out of here by latest 9:30, right? But I'm trying to make it 9:20. So from now on, you will have 30 seconds on the floor, right? Which means that you need to be very concise with the question that you're asking. Matter of fact, actually, please write it down, so when we get to you, you ask your question as directly as possible. And then I'm also going to kindly ask the panel that we keep our responses to 2 minutes, so we can go through this round. I'm going to recognize 6 hands here, so then we'll take 3 minutes. 3 minutes, questions, and then we'll do another 8 minutes just for answers. Okay. Okay. Sihle. Babalo. Simpiwe. Amahle. And then we'll go. Sihle. One more hand. Guys, they're making my job very hard. Okay. Let's go, Letiza. Next round. Actually, Letiza, forgive me. Can we go? Yes, thank you. So we have diversity of voices. Okay, do you guys remember your order?
Yeah.
Yes, so let's start with Felicia.
Good evening. I will.
I think I can project.
Oh, yeah?
All right, I'll be quick. I think there's been an discussion on the question of system, and I'm quite clear on the issue of reality that we're dealing with. But I also want us to confront our own reality that we are dealing with, that in Africa, precisely, we are dealing with leaders that are selling rhetorical solutions. And we must be clear on that point. There is this imagined, and I can make an example just now about, parliamentary sovereignty, how it is imagined. It's a thought, it's an image that we cannot realize, and I speak from a position of the formation of government in South Africa now, and I don't reject that idea. But even with the issue of sustainable development in itself, we are speaking about thoughts, ideas that do not origin here, meaning it's not going to provide solutions for African problems. And so my question, if I go directly to the question, how do we imagine political unification and economic unification that deals precisely with our issues and not political rhetoric?
Number two.
Thank you very much, and Madam Facilitator. Greetings to the panelists. I want to raise a point on what you have said. Marrying it to a point raised by Ubudo. You said as students, black students, that are being targeted, not by weapons anymore. We are not being targeted by guns and machines. We are targeted by statutes, policies that say, in the view of that constitution, that says, in dealing with the injustices and showing the injustices, you are declared an anarchist. Number two, you said that, okay, we must be rebels. Most of the students sitting here come from poor backgrounds. I'm here to get my degree so I can change metal as a car. Because there is no opportunity for me if I don't get my degree. There is no opportunity. When I see a student sleeping in jackets and these legs, and a way that I have been taught as a young leader, from a car in university, and many of the leaders in red, in yellow and green, this year we stood in solidarity. We united and said no, but our leadership was suppressed. How can you, from a political party that you are representing us in parliament, please, what can you guys do for us in terms of that? Why hasn't there been for so long lawyers that are dispersed in universities when we are fighting for others? Because we know now it's no longer capable to just tell you something and go fight. I must fight with a backing behind me. We need your leadership. Because the colonialization that we're fighting now is not of the pink guy coming with a gun to shoot me, but it is with the policies made by imperialists aimed at crushing down the
Mandizibulisele kwisithethe zethu ezibekekileyo because of time zothingqanga nezibazayo. Lo uthethayo ngubabalo. My issue is that xa nisithi we must be rebels, ndiyayithatha le nto ndiyibeke in reality like umongameli wethu phaa usimpilo. The university pacifies us in more ways than one. Each year when you register, you are reminded about when you are not allowed to tabalaza power protest, but you are given a blueprint about if you want to protest, this is the way you must go, this is how you must fight your fight, this is how you must use your voice, this is how you must speak. And when rebels actually do stand up and speak out against the university by excluding, what happens in our minds? We are further pacified. Now, by join the fight, because ubani excluded and just we are degree high. So the university community is further divided. So my question is, City, basically.
We have other questions. Let's not separate.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Martin Silafra, President's Council of the 2026. Just a reminder. Mr. Bofu, you are mentioning, I like the fact that you mentioned leaders such as Traore on the other side. Leaders that are direct in their approach, that know what they want. And we know in our country we are currently lacking such leaders who are direct in their approach. However, you on the other side, you speak about unity, in which I like, about unity, about these political organizations that we see here now united as a forefront to actually fight these injustices that we are currently facing as a country. But the key question we should be asking ourselves is, how do we unite when we are simply fighting amongst ourselves for the basic things amongst ourselves? We do highlight the issues of corruption, we do highlight the other issues that that creating conflict amongst ourselves. And I'm struggling to find, in a way, in which direct way can we actually find that core common ground, is to say, this is the actual thing that we're supposed to be doing in order for us to move forward. We have political organizations in which you have been part of as well. You were a member of the EFF at some point. You also shared the same sentiments about unity, I believe. Now you're a member of MK, you're also sharing the same sentiments about unity and collaboration in a way to try and deal with the wide injustices that we're currently facing in this country. But the true actual point is, how can we actually deal with those things with the movement? Thank you.
Seconds is wild, but I'll try. Jax, you spoke about sustainable development and you spoke about Alexandra, for example, and you spoke about inclusivity, right? It's the 10th year anniversary of the Feast Must Fall movement, and there was little engagement with that from the panel, right? And it says reflection on student leadership and the role of youth in reimagining African governance, right? We've covered very important conversations about coloniality and all of these things, and however we haven't touched on the reimagining part, right? Specifically our political culture. We speak about political cleavages like corruption, tribalism, and all of these things, right? But that's the essence of what governance is, right? So I wanted to ask, what does redefining that look like for each of you? You know, with activism at the forefront, what does it look like? Obviously, it's creative ways, like now Jax is a digital activist, which is a nice creative way to start it. But what more can we do? I'm posing the question, then what to you guys?
I'm a journalism student from the Journalism School and Media Studies at Rhodes University. I'm in love with Commander Baloyi's idea of believing that we should move away from the westernization of laws and governments, especially in African governments. Amahle then touched on the developmental goals that only look good on paper. So now, me personally, I'm someone who believes in socialism, and really always has been believing in socialism, and is against the governance system of democracy because it came with the white man. So now my question is, since we are living in this time of democracy, how do we then Africanize the concept of democracy and these developmental goals, if we can, and if we can't, what should we do and how should we do it?
Thank you very much for all the questions and comments from the floor. Here are my last two messages, and then it's good night from me. Firstly, by rebel, I think we probably are sitting on two different imaginations of what a rebel is.
Yes.
We are not saying by being a rebel, after this conversation, when me and Amahle, we wake up the next morning, we watch the news, we hear now that the road is being bent down. That is not what we are, that's not what we are precisely.
The context, yes.
The rebel, what came about this. As President, I have a homework for you. The next time you do a gathering of this kind, which is outstanding tonight, I want to give you and your team a round of applause. The next time you do this event, please get rid of this sound system. If this is an outsourced company, President, I summon you to say pardon. It's very frustrating. I won't lie. Now, by rebel, and I want everyone to listen to this carefully. By rebel, we are referring to a culture and an attitude of refusal. Right? In other words, in every single conscious action you do as a student, in research, in learning, in teaching, service, in engagement, in leadership, have an attitude of refusal. In other words, when you refuse,
I'm a second office authority.
Behavior. So the question I'll attempt to respond to is the one about there's an appreciation of the type of democracy we have and the understanding which we need to change it and indigenize it. The type of democracy we have. So if you follow this simple concept, there's a law of jurisdiction, meaning which we as Africans, in particular in South Africa, the laws as they are framed within our jurisprudence must reflect on the laws of our forefathers in this land as well. It is incorrect for many people to suggest that there were no laws before, there was no systems of governance before that we utilized to trade, to govern, and resolve our day-to-day affairs as a people. So we must begin to appreciate that we must incorporate those into the mainstream. So we must mainstream our indigenized, all our laws and indigenous understanding. It's very important because the laws we govern or use must reflect the people, and the people must be able to understand them. Earlier on, Advocate, we were making a joke about people in rural areas. Who do they prefer to go to adjudicate their matters? Is it in Duna utilizing customary law and traditional laws that we have, or is it a court? And from a court, the amount of time you have to spend there to end up getting your justice that you want in a court of law is the proven method that actually gets you justice, predominantly rural areas linked to traditional and royal leadership. So it's those things that we must begin to invest in and research significantly, because one of the greatest atrocities has been how the institution of royal leadership has just been eroded significantly to a point where we don't even believe in them, and we don't even understand how they ruled and how they benefited Black people as a people as well. So I really think in the what is next, we have to appreciate that in replacing the system, in doing away with the system is one thing, but also building a new system that incorporates who we are is very important as we lay the foundation for a solid future.
Thank you very much. Don't you think we should let Pedro finish that thought? The mic will behave.
The mic doesn't like you.
Okay, let me try again. So the point I was making is to be a rebel is to have an anti-colonial attitude of refusal, right? To seek to do things differently from the current dominant mainstream option.
Yes.
The way Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes University is, it's a neoliberal institution at the moment, right? It seeks to produce graduates for the marketplace. It sees students as clients to rake maximum revenue, to make profit, to remain sustainable in the market economy. It has no business with qualification that will emancipate your mind. It has no business with treating its students as human beings. It has no business with treating its workers as human beings, right? I mean, across your campus, who cleans toilets here? It's Black people, right? Who was cleaning toilets here in the 1960s? Who was cleaning toilets in the 1920s? So, can you see? The colonial order of treatment of Black people as animals and as subhumans continues up until today. It happens in front of you in this very institution that you probably call Cecil John Rhodes University. So, to rebel, therefore, is to have an attitude of refusal. And also, don't think that as students, you are the only one engaged in this agitation, right? I teach in the Department of Sociology at the University of Zululand, right? My entire curriculum, from first year all the way up to PhD, the topics I supervise for students in PhD and master's level, they are all systems that are anti-colonial, anti-system, and they are about presenting Black people as philosophers, innovators, and thinkers. Something that the system does not want. So the attitude of refusal is what I do every single day, and it's not easy. There are consequences to my life personally, there are consequences to my family, but I always wake up every morning to tell myself that this struggle is bigger than me, right? There are people who were here before me who paid the highest price. And in fact, I am pursuing this struggle knowing very well that my ancestors are with me. So my ancestors and the ancestors of the students I teach, they are protecting me every day. That is why I don't mind waking up every morning to come do this work of speaking to Black young people, because I know that this is a generational mission. And it's something that I want to see fulfilled in my lifetime. Lastly, do not think that when we sit in this room and have a conversation, we are actually not
Now we're in action already, right? Remember, by you being here, you have already made a statement to the neoliberal university that when your source of education is not only the classroom, in fact, the best education that you're willing to receive is the one being offered outside the classroom, right? And there's no Chinese wall between thinking and action. Both these things take place simultaneously. Also, there's no Chinese wall between theory and action. Both these things take place simultaneously, you know? So, as you are thinking, you are also in action. That is why people who are great thinkers are killed. Why are thinkers being killed if thinking is not action, right? Why do they assassinate great thinkers who think for the unity of black people if thinking is not action? So by virtue of thinking, by virtue of coming into this room to sit here at 9 o'clock in the evening, at your age, to have these types of discussion is already a revolutionary action that we have taken. And the enemy is unhappy with what we are doing. And the enemy knows that by conscientizing black young people in spaces like this, there are going to be consequences very soon. Very soon, you are ultimately going to stand up and take your freedom. So never think that your efforts, your presence, your conversations are in vain. It's part of the work that needs to be done for you to achieve your freedom, and your freedom is coming very soon. Keep going.
Thank you. Yeah, well, okay.
So I've been listening quite carefully today, just kind of taking down notes, and this is what I've noticed. We've glazed over the leadership issue, and what the doctor was speaking about is absolutely accurate in terms of the oppressive systems that we live in and how they continue to oppress us and how we need to get out of them. I 100% agree with that. But I think what that has then done is allowed us to kind of hide under this oppressor as opposed to looking at our actual leaders. Because right now what's happened is that we glazed over Noma Tamsanga's question when she asked about how are we supposed to have faith in this leadership when it is this very same leadership that can't hold its own peers accountable, right? That doesn't necessarily, we're gonna sit and we're gonna have this dialogue and you're gonna be told that you're doing all these amazing things by having this dialogue, and two things can be true at the same time. That is absolutely true. But then everybody's gonna go back into their silos, and then you're going to continue being in this varsity. And I think that's something that might be missed from my panel here, is that, and I don't mean this with disrespect, it's been so long, I think you are missing what the students are saying to you when they say they need your guidance, right? And so you are basically asking them, and if I think about this new generation, you're asking them to rebel against you as well, but to also still be in the same pockets as you, right? So it becomes extremely difficult to find solutions, and I hope I'm getting to that answer, to find solutions when we complain about being in a white system, but we're also in the very same corrupt system. And that corrupt system has been created by these leaders, right? Your regalia, the regalia at the top there. All the regalia is pretty much the same now. We can paint them all with the same brush, a corrupt brush. Very rarely can we find a true leader. So it's going to be very difficult for us to sit here and have solutions if, once again I said, if the leaders that speak to us cannot hold themselves accountable. It's very difficult to sit and hear about how we must push forward and fight for this country when we are fighting the exact same people that are speaking to us. And so I understand that there was a very much a position of, sustainable development. Sustainable development cannot go without accountability. And so when we speak about socialism, we cannot go back into the same system that hurts us. I'm talking about you as the youth. If you're looking from 1994, I understand the oppressor and how they are still infiltrating South Africa, I get it. You cannot go, as you've been told, to disrupt that system. You have to disrupt the system that you're in. You cannot change that system, it's rotten. It's done for, you have to create your own. So you as students, for me personally, and this might, oh God, are you guys recording? This might get me cancelled, but you have to create your own political parties. You cannot fall into the very system that's failing you. You have to start your own, that's your revolution. That's your mandate. But, you know, we're gonna go around in circles asking what's wrong with this country, asking ourselves, you know, what can we do when the fish is rotting from their head, but it's all of the fish in the sea. Therefore, we must create our very own. Otherwise, we're gonna keep, you know, you almost keep feeding into the same system. You come in, you learn the same corruption, you learn this is how things are done. So we've spoken a lot about oppression, and I agree oppression is a very important topic in this because, as the doctor has mentioned, you know, everything that he said today was absolutely true. But the question we were also now asking ourselves is, how does leadership lead us to sustainable development? And we require new leadership, unfortunately. We require a re-energization of our political landscape. And that requires you guys, once again, to unify, as the advocate said, but to take off your regalia and to form your own parties with your own ideologies and your own understanding of your plight, what you're going through. There's a generational gap that exists. We cannot deny it. There's a generational gap, and so, you know, we're often told that we are lazy or we don't understand what, you know, what they went through, and I'm 31, so I get it. But you know, you Gen Zs don't have the same history that we had. But that generational knowledge and that generational gap exists, and so it was very hard for me to sit and hear all these solutions that are actually not applicable when the system is broken, as I said. So yeah, I hope I've answered your questions. Okay.
Can you hear me? Well, I think I want to. Ended it before I respond to Ahmad. Firstly, really, and I say this with all seriousness, everybody who's sitting here now at this time, I just want to say, firstly, thank you for being here. But I want to say that, you know, there's this thing about leadership which is misunderstood here. By sitting here now at this time of the night, you are a leader yourself. Because nobody is forcing you to be here. By leaders, we don't mean political leaders. That's where the first mistake is. That's why you say the problem is caused by the same leaders. You are thinking leadership means political leadership. You can lead in the church, you can lead in the classroom, you can lead in whatever. When the topic didn't say is political leadership an obstacle, it says is leadership and governance. Governance can be in a school, in a soccer club, anywhere. So that's the leadership we're talking about, not political. Please, whatever you do, don't form political parties. Because what's the point of that? To be honest, myself, I don't like political parties. Maybe I can be kicked out of my political party for that. Not because there's something wrong inherent with political parties, but it is what we have turned them to be, things that we worship. You know, it's like if you talk about Christianity, Christianity is not to be a Catholic or an Anglican or a Methodist, so you can be above those things about what color of the blouse you are wearing, to be about the message, the thing itself, the religion or the Christianity or whatever, Islam, whatever it is, rather than your denomination. That's what we mean by uniting people. Now, I'm very touched by the questions that were asked. I think you at the back there are basically asking the same question. Because you are saying, okay, what must we do? What should you do now after you leave this place? And I'll answer it by using an example. You know, we all talk about fees must fall, right? That for me was, I was involved, I was there almost on a daily basis because it fascinated me so much to be able to support a different generation from ours of student leaders. And one of the most important, the reason we still talk about fees must fall now is because since 1976 and the struggles of the 80s, it was the first time that people, students, took leadership and defied the T-shirt, if you know what I mean. For the first time since so-called democracy, you had people marching for the same cause. EFF leaders, I represented all of them, so I knew them on a one-on-one basis. There were EFF leaders, there were ANC, SASCO leaders, there were leaders of other political parties, and non-aligned students. But every day they would wake up and march and deal with fees must fall. So that is why that became one of the most glorious moments in the history of this country. It educated me because I was, like you're saying, I used to think, what do they know, these people? You know, these kids of post-1994. Until I attended the meetings of the Fees Must Fall generation and understood what they were crying about and why they were different from our generation of student leaders. So my short answer is, if you want to unite practically, you must find the minimum common denominator. It might be Christianity, it might be the love of football, but in our case, it's the land. If we can just unite about that, we can fight about everything else, but let's agree that we must get our land back. As a start, you know, what's wrong with that? Just tell me what is wrong with that. Or is there a black person who doesn't understand that we need to get our land back? I doubt it. So we look for the lowest common thing that can unite us, and that will then undermine those things that divide us. That's really my message to you. And I hope you can do it. And I meant it when I say, just sitting here, it doesn't start in some big place called the United Nations. It starts here. The fact that in this room you have people from the EFF, people from the ANC, people from MK, and they're able to sit in this room for 2 or 3 hours is a big thing. It's a big start. And that should be first start, and then we can bring it into the other spheres of society. Thank you.
My dear leaders, please do forgive me. I cannot open for another round. It's school night. So I think I would just like to quickly call a member of the committee from the MK student movement to give our vote of thanks. And then from there, we will dissolve this meeting.
dula. Yes. Dula, dula. Yes.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, comrades, I do not have time. I've been warned by this adorable lady here that my name is William Abed, and I'm the Secretary General, the spokesperson of the MKSM, Rhodes University. And mine is to only, ours as the MKSM is to only appreciate the presence of our leaders and to appreciate this opportunity to ventilate different perspectives and to consolidate them and have one collective voice. But one last advice that I want to give to our leaders and to these students as well is we have conversed a lot on the external components of the difficulties that we are facing in this country. But I want you, from tonight going onwards, to go inside yourselves and try to compose a consolidated perspective inside yourselves, to try to consolidate your internal mechanism, because your actions are a direct manifestation of what comes from the inside. So if you internalize and compose your internal self, you have established yourself from a state of convulsiveness to a state of consciousness. This is what we need, because a state of consciousness gives you the necessary awareness to be able to assess all the difficulties that we are facing in this country. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, leadership. I just think I want to reiterate by saying thank you to Amasha Jacks for gracing us with your presence. Thank you to Dr. Pedro Mzeleni, as well as Mr. Bongani Baloy, as well as Advocate Dali Mpofu. I think we also thank the SRC for being the ones, that are able to plan for this. So I think let's give our leadership a round of applause. We also thank our students, our student leaders. I see there's the chair of chair up there. You could just give us a nice wave. Thank you as well to MKSM, as well as the leadership of the MK. And just as a token of our appreciation for Rhodes University, we just like to gift all of our panel discussants, with a small little takeaway, just so you guys remember the purple universities.
Akunamuntu ngaphansi umhlaba ayedwa umhlaba wonke isandla sabantu akunamuntu ngaphansi umhlaba ayedwa ababefuno usetshenzelwa abantu ayesaba kongiwa ayefuno usetshenzelwa abantu